Happy Friday.
Hey,
How's it how's it going?
it's still going.
It's still yes, it is. It's still going. Yeah, it's still going. And I think we just trying to warm everyone up here and break the ice. So help me out here, people. I think we are trying to figure out what beans and headlines to roast today. And I don't know what you have on your menu, but I have an idea. And so, let's start with you, Eric. What's on your mind?
It's interesting. It feels like this week has been an extension of previous weeks in a way, right? We're talking like about the economy, about interest rates. We've been talking about that for the last few weeks. We're still talking about, Russia and Ukraine, and now, India is kind of getting in the mix a little bit because they want to buy gas from Russia, and Trump is trying to use that as leverage against Russia. The Epstein thing is still burbling about. And yeah, it's fun times.
Yeah, I think we're the only people here talking about the things like the federal interest rate and all that because it is related to those policies are going to impact the way we build or look for jobs and afford things. And that's why we're talking about it still. I don't know of any other content creators who are trying to take that and make it into bring it into popular attention. We are.
I do. I mean, I don't know. Hotep Jesus is one who
Totally.
I don't know if you guys follow him. That's all he I mean, that's a big part of a feature of his show every single day.
He talks finance.
He talks about the economy. Yes.
Yeah.
Every single day. He talks about investing, finance, stuff. Yep.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, well, at least on the surface.
But yes, I agree with you. And trying to stay ahead of the curve. I think that he is one of the few that kind of like at least political influencers, who are talking about this stuff. So I agree with you, Perseus, on that.
I think that's important because we have been so not that if you think Epstein list is important or the latest so-called cultural war with Sydney Sweeney and all that. I mean, I'm sure we can weigh in on that, but I feel like it's just seems it takes more brain power to wrap their head around Trump's monetary policies, and how they will affect your ability to make a living and thrive. And I dare say there are consequences for the midterms too, right? If people aren't seeing the promises that they think they were getting before Trump got into office translate into Q4, then people are starting to, I think, we have big question marks about what this whole thing is about, and where Trump is leading them, and what we're expecting in 2026. So,
and the experts, we know how they go sometimes, but the scuttlebutt is that it's going to take about 6 months for the growth aspects of the big beautiful bill to kick in. I mean, I think we all know that the economy that we've had for a while now is wonky, right? It's like there's, we had, QE, like crazy low interest rates for way too long. And again, you have to understand that prior to 2008, I mean, we've had the Fed for a long time. We went off the gold standard in 72. But we never had hyper low interest rates until after 2008. It was I don't know if you remember, but after the housing crisis, it was, we sort of embarked on this sort of never before, financial roller coaster ride of just, putting interest rates so low that it would, spur the economy. And, we've talked about this, a bunch of different ways over the last few weeks, but that's like pouring crack cocaine gasoline on something. You might get a big fire, right? If you need to be warm, that's a good thing, but there's downsides to it. And I'm not alone in saying this, but the economy that we had up until COVID, the COVID economy was totally screwed up. We printed, trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars. Trump did a lot of that. Sorry, he did. Biden doubled and tripled down on that. That's a lot of money printing. That's a lot of Keynesian. Honestly, it's so hollow and fake. It's not real economic growth. The government does not create wealth. They do not create jobs. They don't. They on the surface, it seems like they do because they just create money and they give people paychecks. Blah blah blah. It's stimulative, but not in a good way. Again, it's. I keep going back to the steroids on crack, analogy because it is really pretty much like that. It's like if you get hurt in a traffic accident, the doctor might give you some steroids. I don't know if he give you crack, but give you some OxyContin, I guess. But those things need to be short term. They're not healthy. They're not good for you. They might help you get over the initial hump, but the U.S. economy, and in my opinion and others' opinions, they stayed on the crack steroids after the 2008 financial crisis for way too long. And then 2020 came along and they did it again after, interest rates were crazy low, in, 21, through, half of 22. And that was a long time to have this amazingly stimulative artificial impetus in the economy. And these big interests get used to it. They get
keyword artificial. I totally agree.
Absolutely. And it's just not healthy. And I think that Trump's economic advisors, I think most of them know this. It's been very apparent from the beginning that Trump is like, look, the other guys got their crack gasoline. I want my crack gasoline. And I understand that it's a component of his economic plan, right? He's got the big, beautiful bill. We all talked about that. We have problems with it. It's not perfect, but it is definitely a supply side, clear water, cut taxes, cut regulation, organic growth, approach. That is the correct approach, right? Those things do help an economy. They do grow the economy. The problem is all this other structural weakness and gremlins and things that have built up in the system. And that's why we're seeing, and also, we're finding out, and this is not a surprise, but things like the job numbers and the official reports and things that were coming out of the Biden administration, I would argue it happens with, all administrations, but
yes,
it was especially bad during Biden, just the outright lying about it. They really were cooking the books. They were lying about the numbers. They were manipulating data. And, that's what Trump is dealing with. And Nikki, you weren't here last week. And this is the last thing I'll say is that we talked about the interest rates, and Paul actually, and I agreed prior to the job reports coming out that we were like, interest rates aren't high right now. They're still historically medium low. We don't really need to lower them anymore. Again, understanding the risk and damage that super low interest rates do. However, last week the jobs were corrected, right? And he fired the job, the statistician and head of the BLS. But after we sort of saw that the jobs numbers for the last year were they corrected them by over 1 million jobs. That's insane.
Yep.
It's never happened before. And
Yeah.
in light of that, we were like, holy shit, we might need some of that crack gasoline, right? So it's looking like the Fed is absolutely going to lower rates, probably 50, 75, maybe even a full point in the next 6 months. Last thing I'll say is I do think that crack gasoline in combination with the big, beautiful bill, the good stuff from the big, beautiful bill, which there was a fair amount, is hopefully going to stimulate and create a very healthy economic environment.
Well, I think the other thing that needs to be addressed that I'm not seeing happen is the reliance on a lot of blue areas, even whole states that rely on government sector jobs and government contract related jobs. And if those aren't replaced with private sector jobs or private sector options, you're going to get people feeling the huge crunch of job growth that has not been addressed. And I think one of my concerns with Trump taking a huge blow, with the initial kind of DOGE cuts to federal jobs, was that there was no replacement in the private sector already kind of building up and to fill the void for these people. And this is, that's the thing that people are going to feel politically. They're going to blame it on the top, even though their local governments are responsible for creating an environment that isn't friendly to small businesses or even private businesses. But when you combine that with a heavy hand of slashing at the federal government level, then you are creating a situation where people are going to be who obviously are going to be feeling those economic effects and blame it on your administration. So that's a huge point that hasn't, really been addressed by the Republicans. Even if there are things in the big beautiful bill that are going to improve on that, it's going to take some time, and they're still going to, take the political heat for it. The second thing is just, jobs in general and job availability for people who are actually trying to get work. This is, if you guys don't mind talking about the Workday lawsuit that's brought to, I'm not sure which level, but I know that it's at a federal level lawsuit where there's the company that is sort of as AI powered, has AI powered HR tools. I think they have dabbled in some finance or something like that as well. But some of these job sites like Indeed and ZipRecruiter or even just single businesses will use their Workday services to scan applicant pool resumes that people submit online. And a federal judge basically said that their AI system may have blocked hundreds of millions of job applicants just from getting interviews. So if people don't have a way to get a job, a lot of, if there's no signs on the windows local, near you where you go and you put your application in, or you're a professional like me looking for a job, and another source of reliable income, this is what you have. These are the options you have to go and look for opportunities in your career. And if you're putting your application into a big pool and you're not getting anything, I mean, I've tried multiple times, multiple ways. I've revised my CV and resume, and maybe there's something on there where an AI script is basically saying, well, and tossing my resume, or my CV, and I'm not even getting a look at. I have not gotten responses for the most part. I've been a person, I've always been able to get a job my entire life pretty easily. Some of it comes with who you know as well in your network, but at this age and my status, I don't have a huge network outside of people who are already practicing medicine. So I have to use these job sites. And if you have people manipulating your ability to get selected or even just get an interview and get a foot in the door, that's really discouraging for a bunch of people, and especially me. So, jobs for me is the number one issue on on the table. And yes,
so this kind of goes back to my query from the last show. Like, why does Trump or the policymakers think that QE is going to create jobs? I think
investment. It's cheap money.
Yeah,
it's free money.
But isn't
It
that
is
bit of a
stimulative for the
too?
economy. It is. That's why I keep calling it crack gasoline / steroids. It's, it really does. It allows risk to take place. Businesses, if interest rates are super low and it doesn't cost a lot of money to borrow a lot of money. I mean, just look at the higher education. I mean, you look at what's happened with universities over the last 20 years, right? They've exploded. Everybody goes, and it's primarily because of the free / cheap money, unlimited money, frankly, from student loans. I mean, obviously that's a little bit different because that's a government capture. But you know, look at the car market, right? When interest rates are 0%, you see all those commercials on TV where you can get a brand new car on a 3-year lease for zero. You don't have to pay any interest on it.
Yeah.
Now, on the other side of that, we've talked about this a lot. When you have low interest rates and money's super cheap, it increases speculation like a lot. It increases competition. It actually makes prices go up. It does. It makes housing prices go up. It makes, again, car manufacturers know, like if there's no interest, for a while they'll keep prices the same, but if there's all that activity, prices will start creeping back up because that's the way it works. But yeah, I mean, there's two sides to the low interest rate coin. There's two sides to the high interest rate coin. There's many sides to the middle interest rate. There's no perfect neutral, that we can stick to all the time.
Well, let me just reframe that, and maybe it's more of a comment. Why does Trump and his policymakers think that QE is the magic bullet when there are other variables that are affecting people's ability to look for work and for the economy to grow? For example, like what Nikki brought up, there are these AI things, practices, right? Hiring practices. It's creating an obstacle at that level for people to look for work. Tariffs potentially, right? There's some industries that are relying on imports to grow their business and hire. Do you know what I mean? Like there's so many other variables. So why does he think that QE is somehow the magic bullet that's going to be the cure-all and to get the economy going? I think it's a crapshoot. That's just my opinion. I don't think
it's part of the mix, though. So what Nikki was talking about, in order for Trump's overall plan to work, which is first of all, most of the stuff that he's doing, I mean, there is still a lot of government money, being spent, way too much, frankly. Nikki did have a point about, a lot of these cuts, the federal, the government job cuts, the grant cuts, that stuff is money, right? It's not wealth creation, but it is economic activity. It is counted in the GDP, right? I would argue that it probably shouldn't be, but in order for Trump's overall plan to work, and this is the reason why he's been demanding and hounding for lower interest rates since the get-go. They know the economy's a house of cards. It's very wonky. The correct way forward is cutting these regulations, cutting these taxes, because that's how businesses and even individuals, like you can take risk. You can say, oh, I want to, start that muffin business I've, always been dreaming of, right? Like that's, when money is cheap like that, and the on-ramp is there's less regulation and there's less, stickiness and, red tape and stuff. It just greases the skids for economic activity.
Absolutely.
And that's just a short way of saying, like, that's their plan. It's a supply side, clear water, get the government out of it as much as possible, let people keep the most of their money as possible and just kind of let it loose. The only part of the equation that they don't really have is the interest rates. And that's what they're banking on, and that's what they're pounding the table about. And it looks like they're going to get them because, again, these stats were being, if not manipulated, poorly managed. In a bad way.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And then the other piece of the interest rate, lowering the interest rate issue is, people will also borrow more money from predatory lenders, and we didn't really talk about that part of it. I mean, it does.
But their interest rates won't come down, Nikki. It'll still be 28%.
Yes, it does. Still, but still, people will take more risk though, and borrow more, like you said, in general, and get in more debt, which is it's just a vicious cycle. I agree. I worry about it a little bit. I think it's a bad move to push for it to be too low, for sure. I think they need to stay where they are, or maybe even inch up a little higher, to tell you the truth, and then have the market correct itself. But that's just my
I saw
little opinion.
I can't confirm this. I saw it caught somewhere on X that he wants it to go as low as 1%.
Oh, that's insane.
He wants it. What are we
I
at?
haven't seen that.
We're at 4.5 right now. That would, and a full jump would take us down to 3.5. That's kind of the max that I keep hearing. I watch CNBC CNBC and Bloomberg and Fox Business all day just because I have it on. But that seems to be the consensus. Like, we're gonna get a full point over several meetings in the next 6 to 9 months.
But
okay. I thought you were saying, Perseus, that he wants it to go down to 1%, not by 1%.
No, 1%.
Yeah, that's what I would agree with Perseus. Yeah, that's what Trump wants it 0. Like, he wants all of it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Here's my question.
I just want to make sure I'm hearing.
But that's it. I would just say that's a, he knows that's not going to happen, but that's the art of the deal, right? It's not rocket science, but that's how
ask
Trump
for more than what you
negotiates,
want.
right? He asks for the moon, and when he gets a satellite, he's like,
good.
Really getting tired of this art of the deal thing. That's just me personally. Art of the deal.
It works.
It works. It's simple negotiation tactics. It does work.
It works.
My question is, if he gets to twist the Jerome Powell's arm and interest rate a lower, hypothetically maybe to 1%, if that happens, does that interest rate stay at that level for how long? Can the next regime, the next administration, say change that? I guess what I'm asking is how permanent are things?
The Fed is supposed to be, look, the Fed in general is a whole other conversation, whether or not it should exist, right? Like, what are they doing? They started off with one mandate. Now they have 2, which is, inflation and employment, which, is very, it conflicts, and makes things hard. They're not a government entity. They're not a private entity, but although they are essentially private banks, it's tough. Every administration, to answer your question, Perseus, wants 0% interest rates because, again, they have 4 years of crack steroids. Like, it's just gasoline on the economic fire, and then they leave sort of the smoky damage to the next guy. That seems to be the the cycle. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the other thing too about the jobs growth, the stats and the jobs stats and things like that, we kind of barely glossed over that. What do you guys think about how they report those stats? Do you think I always get concerned that they report it in a quarter and then they get actual numbers. They report these estimates, they get the actual numbers, and then report that, and it's quiet. It's quietly reported unless it's a huge discrepancy, and then picked up by certain outlets, depending on what the news is. So what do you guys think? How about changing the strategy to waiting and reporting actual numbers or not? What do you think that will do to sort of the kind of the leadership in the financial industry, how they will navigate based on a different type of reporting? That's something I don't know for sure.
Well, it's a survey, and it's by sort of definition, the tools that they use are imperfect. It's almost like polling. It kind of is polling, frankly.
Yeah, it is.
But they've had some real. It was not tidy before COVID, but ever since COVID, apparently the responses to the survey have been really, like, the quality has just fallen off a cliff. And your question is around the way they do it. I don't know all the details, but they do take these initial surveys, they do projections, they do charts and graphs to kind of try and predict what it's going to be based on previous cycles. It's just like a lot of stat stuff. They use previous stats and current data to try and predict what they think is the reality. And then when they finally get the reality through tax receipts and other official means where they kind of know for sure what's going on, that's when they do the revisions. And the question that's come up, to your point, is like, is that system good? Is it helpful? Because they revised these numbers last week down a crazy amount. I mean, it was the most amount ever. And, it brought into question, how manipulated were these figures during the Biden administration? I think that you could make the case that they're always manipulated, right? Because the executive branch, whoever the president is, they kind of they control, they're the boss of the Bureau of Labor Statistics and these other stats that come out. Is it, straight up manipulation? I don't know. But I could definitely make a case for the fact that, during Biden, I think a lot of us were like, yeah, the economy doesn't feel as good as you guys are claiming it is. And that was a big reason he lost, remember?
Yes.
Like they kept saying, like, look at the numbers. Everybody's like, fuck the numbers. Like my eggs are through the roof. My gas is through the roof. Inflation's, they did not measure inflation correctly during Biden. We know that for sure. Right. They kept saying like, oh, it's only like 7%. Like my shit's like 25% more than it was last year, 30%. So these revisions have definitely called into question the way they do it, their tool set and the way they go through this. Hopefully they'll revisit it because it doesn't seem to be working. It doesn't seem to be accurate or helpful. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, is it more, I guess the question I'm asking is, because I don't know, I don't follow these things closely. Will it affect politics more than it actually affect the finance and jobs, businesses, because of the infrastructure and, how people are responding on Wall Street? Or is it really more of a political effect? If they actually produce. Okay.
I think it's because Wall Street's, I mean, it's not a perfect science, but they're like the prediction markets, right? Like the prediction markets for the president, for the political races, everybody's like, the polls, but let's look at who's betting money on this stuff, right? Like those are more accurate in a lot of ways. And I think if you look at Wall Street, it's not perfect. It's got a lot of problems. It's got a lot of problems in what they react to and how, but I think that the size of the revision from last week was what was surprising to Wall Street. Again, they didn't tank either when those numbers came out, but what I'm trying to say is Wall Street kind of knows this stuff. They don't know for sure. They definitely listen to the official numbers. They definitely respond when the first announcement comes out. They definitely respond when the revisions come out. And there's multiple revisions as months go along. But Wall Street tends to have a better handle. Again, the money, people, this is their livelihoods. They're making real bets on things, and they're not going to not do the research. They're not going to just take the government's word for X, right? They're going to look at other factors. They're going to do their own research. It's almost like public polling versus internal candidate polling, right? When your money's on the line, you're not going to just, take this stuff hook, line, and sinker. You're going to look into it. But if you look at, the 2-year yield, the 10-year yield, those are essentially lower than what the Fed rate is, right? And that's the statistical argument where they're saying, look, Powell, you're off by like 1.25 based on these real world, purchases of, treasuries, the 2, 5, 10. And so that's a pretty good predictor of like, where there's a delta there, it means somebody's wrong. And it's rarely the market. I mean, markets can get, emotional and, go crazy for sure. And it's not perfect. There's a lot of impetus in the market that makes it artificial in some ways as well. But most smart people look at how the market's reacting to these things as opposed to what the government is telling them.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot to track.
It really is complicated. It's messy as shit, honestly. So
let me just reframe my questions and comment. I don't know what the next Q3 and Q4 is like for the American economy. It's just not clear to me, regardless of what, Trump wants to do with QE or whatever. And like what Nikki is saying anecdotally, it seems like a lot of people are have a big question mark, like where are we headed? You know, this hasn't really translated in my ability to make plans for myself and
Absolutely.
to buy things. And this also goes back to my comment a couple of episodes back, where I just feel like this administration is doing a shitty job in keeping people up to date on where we are in the roadmap. Like, what can you expect? You know what I mean? There's a big gap that everyone has to kind of fill in and figure out, like, where are we going? What can we expect for the rest of the year?
Well, I mean, here again, I think, well, right now, you know, there's no midterms, there's no elections, you know, midterms, there's some local elections coming up, but there's no midterms yet. But people, the bottom line is people are going to not base their political decisions on predictable or predictability of the market. They're going to base their political decisions, the bread and butter, like normal, average American citizen is going to base their political decision on their current economic status. If they're still struggling, at the grocery store, if they can't get a loan, they can't get if they can't get their business started up, or they're, you know, over-regulated to the, you know, to the hills, that affects their family in their individual financial outlook directly. They're not, you know, most of them are not basing it on predictability of the markets, and so so that's the key. If the administration doesn't fix those things indirectly or directly, or at least address them publicly, then I think that's going to be much more, have much more of an effect on, you know, at least electoral outcomes for people, which again then changes financial outlook for people as well. So
absolutely,
and I want to add that the people, you know, this group of people, this section of the voters, they're not necessarily tracking Epstein list too. I'm not saying that's not important, right? They're not really following some of the headlines that the influencers are banking on. So, and I think it's important to keep this topic on the radar, because when the midterms does roll around, people are going to be like, "Oh, what happened there? How come? You know, why did we kind of lose the mega momentum here as well? Maybe because you didn't pay attention to this part. This issue is the most important, okay? Sure. Not saying the other ones are not important, but this is the one that people feel the most, and this is the one that people use to understand the MAGA brand. Okay, they don't necessarily interface with the MAGA brand through Epstein lists or anything like the influencers want you to look at. It's like when Nikki says, your jobs, your ability to pay your mortgage.
It's the kitchen table stuff that's always the most important stuff in elections. Always, ever.
A lot of kitchen table stuff lately that this administration is attending to. At least that's my perception. I may be wrong.
Well, so as Nikki said, you know, the midterms are, in political terms, light years away, right? Like they don't even matter. Like anybody talking about, you know, we're going to lose the midterms, or, you know, we're going to win the midterm. It's like, you have no idea what you're talking about. It's so far away. And Trump has a very good economic advisory council, right? These are way better people than he had the first time.
Absolutely.
I mean, actually, he had some pretty good ones the first time. Actually, I think Larry Kudlow is very, very smart. But they have to know what we're talking about, you know, and they know that there's some underpinnings of the US and global economy that are weird. They see AI coming in. They do know that when they cut government jobs and they cut these government grants and that sort of stuff, it's gonna create job losses. They're also cutting, you know, some services, right? They're cutting, you know, the SNAP benefits. You can't buy soda and you know, snacks and candy and bullshit, or liquor or lobster with EBT anymore, you know? So a lot of this stuff is kind of coming online at once. They have to know that that is going to be sort of disruptive and I would say sort of a negative in a lot of ways. But again, they're banking on this explosive growth that's going to start coming online, kind of hit, in full in about 6 months. And what you were talking about, Perseus, is absolutely true. As soon as Trump got into office, and I think I said this, it was egg prices and gas prices. If he can get gas prices and egg prices down from where Biden had them, that's going to give him a lot of ammo, right? That's going to help him preserve some of his political capital, especially on the economy. But again, the numbers aren't great. And we also have AI coming in. And we've talked about this a lot. I don't personally think that this is like buggy whips. I think that this is a bigger deal. And we're seeing this in what Nikki was talking about in terms of like the data versus the reality. And what we're seeing is a bifurcation in economic statistics of productivity and job growth, right? Usually before AI, productivity and job growth kind of went hand in hand because productivity was tied to human bodies, right? That there's a split now where we're able to have productivity, which again is measured, is GDP. These are official government statistics. Productivity has been used forever to describe the health of an economy. And we're quickly getting to a place where the economy can be technically healthy, but you can have more and more and more people not working and not having a good time, like really struggling and not being able to support themselves. And so I don't think that there's a chance in hell that they don't know that these downsides exist. I can only hope that they're, taking them into account. And just to reiterate, I do think that the growth aspects, the cuts, the tax cuts, the regulation cuts, that Trump is doing like crazy, like he's just pulling all this stuff back. The bet that they're making is that that stuff is going to offset the bad stuff that I just talked about.
Yeah, I agree with your take on that. The only thing I do have a question though. I mean, how much do you think that AI is affecting or contributing to productivity at this point? I actually don't know the answer to that.
I think we're just seeing that. I've seen some articles and some stats on that. I think that we're just starting to see the beginnings of it, and it is what it is. It's coming. I don't think that there's any stopping it, or it's going to do what it's going to do. I think it's going to decimate some jobs. We're already seeing.
So which ones specifically do you
clerical,
think?
There's going to be a weird reshuffling of our social order, in my opinion, in the coming years, because what's going to happen is there's going to be so many white collar knowledge worker type people who have traditionally experienced, higher order, social status. You went to college, you know how to write stuff, you know how to research stuff, blah, blah, blah. Those jobs are the ones that are being replaced. Not plumbers, not HVAC people, not hands-on, like there's some hybrid stuff. AI is certainly helpful. Like a landscaper can, use AI as a tool, but the AI is never going to be able to get out there and sculpt that lawn or that property.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with it in theory. I'm just trying to figure out where it's actually happening, because even with the writing, editing, I mean, prompt writing, getting AI, using a prompt to get it to write something is a lot more effective and useful. Although AI lies a lot and relies on data that may or may not be true.
It's wrong a lot.
Primary source, or it's a lot, so it's wrong on that. But it is efficient, So I would agree with that. But if you're using it to edit things, which is what I do, because I'm writing a book, and when I'm trying to write essays or like that, use it to edit. I don't want to name specific. I don't want to get in trouble naming specific AI tools, but they're not that great. I mean, they have problems all the time. They're not accurate, and you still need to go through and edit. So you still can't eliminate. We're not at the point where we can eliminate human beings from even doing some of this stuff. So I mean, I would agree with you that there's a potential for it to change, productivity and those things. I just not seeing the data on that, and I guess that's where my question is.
Yeah,
is it actually producing?
Yeah, I would argue that it's sloppy. That everything you described is true. It lies. It makes shit up. It's a problem. But at the same time, law firms are not hiring as many clerks out of college as they used to, because even like a couple years ago, because it used to be young people pouring through tomes of text, having to read things. And you know what I mean? Like, and as sloppy as AI is, and yes, you do have to correct and double check, but you can pit Grok against Chat against Claude and kind of quickly suss out any wonkiness. And you don't have to hire, 12 law clerks. You can hire 2. But and we're seeing this, and I'm searching just as you were talking. Microsoft a couple weeks ago released this paper about the jobs and which jobs are being affected most by AI. See if I can find it. If I can't find it quickly,
that'd be great if you can find it. Send it to me.
Yeah. But it's happening, and I'm not really ever a Cassandra, with this stuff. I don't, I always was very excited about this stuff, right? But as somebody who writes for a living and comes up with ideas, it doesn't do great stuff, It doesn't come up
useful.
with great.
It's extremely useful, as a tool for sure.
It is, absolutely.
But but whether or not it's going to be able to replace humans, I'm very skeptical about that.
Well, but just for the record, I think it's going to quote unquote replace humans. I think it's just going to eat into the productivity metric so much without that body attached to it that it's going to erode that connection. Right. And there's going to be so much of stuff. And again, you could argue that it was busy work, right? Or humans, or shouldn't be doing that stuff. I mean, being a law clerk, I guess you learn and stuff while doing it, but that's pretty tedious crap. In the medical industry, I'm sure that there's a bunch of, paperwork and stuff that humans kind of had to do up until recently.
But no, that's that's the problem.
Not even like codes or
because
insurance stuff.
Coding and things like that. We used to. When you work in if you work in a subspecialty or even a general specialty, there's only a few codes that you use in life. Taking care of people. And so you tend to memorize the ones that you use. I can still remember, ones that I use, even knowing, that the computer was going to help generate it for me. If I put in the diagnosis, I would remember the codes, and you end up having to remember the code that you bill anyway, the one that's going to get you the most, revenue from something. So I don't know that technology really, with electronic health record really helped us a lot in that. What it has required us to do is actually do more administrative work, which takes time away from actual patient care. So it is a detriment to actually healthcare. Now, is it helpful to go up and look up a topic and do a Google search? It is actually a lot more efficient than to go to ChatGPT or even Google AI to go and look up a topic, even on a medical, or scientific issue, and then pull up the journals that are relevant. But you still have to read them and figure out which ones are, have bullshit. Or not accurate data or faulty statistics. There's still a role for people to do actually large, kind of multi-system systematic reviews. So that is still, and people still need to do that and kind of program the search, algorithm. But has it made the process faster and more efficient for you to actually compile a list of articles and then go and pick them and read them? Absolutely. Definitely. Rather starting off going to the library and having to go pull out journals and things like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
you know, that's yeah, so I agree in on that respect, but in terms of day-to-day taking care of patients,
Oh, no, no, no.
it's
Again,
made our
like
job much more
that,
onerous
and that's where the split's
yeah,
going to be, right? It's going to be
yeah.
sort of human, where human touch is going to be valued. For instance, my son is pretty young, but he loves music. He plays guitar and instruments and things. And for a long time, he's like, I want to be a music producer. And I was like, no, it's not going to exist. And, we're already seeing, I actually work with a lot of professional musicians, and the only thing that has remained largely unaffected is live performance. Everything that happens in a studio is toast, is
Yeah.
absolute toast. And
Which is actually potentially a good thing, I think, because more artists can actually self-publish and own, own
absolutely,
their
but I'm
work
talking about
in this
purely
respect.
from a job,
Yeah.
industry, employment
Yes.
standpoint, right?
Yeah.
These are jobs, and you can make the argument that we need to move on, but the fact is that those jobs are vanishing almost overnight. I mean, within the
Correct.
period of a couple years, and that's what I mean by it's not buggy whips. I mean, I'm not going to be like Mr. AI Doom here, but I do think it's going to be far more disruptive and potentially have more far-reaching negatives than even when the internet came along,
I
right?
don't
The
know.
internet did, like, what did the
I'm very hopeful, Eric. I think the humans
check out this list that
I
I
think
just
we
put
will
up.
correct things.
Check out this
Yeah,
list.
when we get rid of AI.
Yeah.
'Cause
So
I can tell you in my industry, it's been a net negative. It has been, because copywriters, graphic designers,
they're just out
and
of, yeah.
and in my agency, they've um, implemented AI and told us that there are certain assignments that you do have to use AI. I say, fine, okay. Did you know I've spent more time cleaning up after AI?
That's what I'm saying.
It's giving me six
That's my
fingers.
point. It makes your job harder, but it's not eliminating your job at all because it is crappy. I mean, I try to get
It will, though.
ChatGPT to create a great eventually, but I just don't see it happening. I mean, how long has ChatGPT and OpenAI been on the market
They just released
doing this
ChatGPT
type of stuff?
5
I know, but
today or
it
yesterday.
still doesn't do. I used it this morning to create a chart, and the chart the data, I gave it the data to put in the chart and it was garbage. The formatting sucks. You still have to go in and physically do the formatting and things yourselves. It's not it's not advancing that rapidly that I think that it really is going to replace people that way. It's going to make people like Percy's job more miserable. But I just don't think it's replacing people that fast.
Well, I'll tell you what the update is. They've stopped using AI in my company, at least, because we're wasting time. So I posted this is AI productivity. AI productivity does not equal main street job creation, and also it doesn't mean translate into other things too. So my other larger question is, I want to know who these tech bros are that are like hanging out with Trump in Mar-a-Lago and saying AI, like push it. Like, I don't think AI is going to benefit Main Street overall. That's just my opinion. It's going to benefit Wall Street. It's going to benefit certain industries. But I think a lot of the people in the MAGA base are more of the mainstream. And Eric say that they're mostly plumbers. But you know what? The sizable number of them are also white-collar office workers too, right? So
Yeah, there's a
that's
wide
important.
swath of
I mean, we
everything.
can't say that, we don't care about the people who are writing insurance, underwriting insurance, or people, the bank tellers. I mean, that's kind of part of Main Street.
Yeah, but
So
I mean, look, I'm in the same industry as you. I see AI coming in from a writing standpoint, from an art standpoint, from a design standpoint. I just did a series of animatics, which they use for test, right? They use for focus groups and stuff. You don't have to make a full series of commercials, right? You make a cheaper series of bad commercials that were traditionally drawn by illustrators, right? And we've seen, over the last like 20 years where it went from like, freeze frames, like a cartoon like in a paper to very sort of rudimentary animation. Then we saw people that were doing like, 3D animation, and it got very sort of like humanistic, humanoid, but still not, real people. That required an entire, team, a deep team of people to do, right? You had to have people to draw it. You had to have people to scan those drawings in and put them into the computer program and make them move. And then you had to have music people, and you had to have voiceovers, and you had to have, the writers and the conceptual people up front to do it, blah, 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 blah. I just did some that were half the price of what I just described. And again, just 2 years ago, that was the standard. And it was done by a skeleton crew of about 4 people. And it came out fabulous. And we did it quicker. And we did not use illustrators. We did not use, obviously, I wrote them, but, and again, you still need oversight. And I'm not saying, again, I don't think anybody's saying that these industries will be completely blown up and, put out of business by AI. But what it's going to do is it's going to focus the people that do these. So check out this list. This is what I was talking about. This Microsoft did this big study. And again, this isn't even perfect because what's not on here actually is legal, which is one of the big ones. So this was, something they've been doing over the last couple of years, and it changes daily. But if you go down through this list, you will see, entire careers that just don't exist anymore, that don't have to exist anymore. Proofreaders. Now, while I'll agree that, chat and these AI tools are not perfect, in my industry, we used to rely on humans that were proofreaders, and they made good money, and they would go through everything, and they would go, they'd use, the Chicago rules or Strunk and White to, to fix your writing. We don't hire those people anymore.
Let me just stop you right there. What's going to happen to proofreader, Mr. or Miss proofreader then? All this list here, there are going to be social and political.
All of these required proofreaders.
No, my tying this back to what we were kicking off the show with. There are going to be political and social consequences for just saying, "Oh, these jobs don't matter anymore," and that's my problem. Like, it's like this certain kind of casual cavalierness about these industry leaders saying AI is going to, as the next.
It's going to be disruptive for sure.
Which is why I'm optimistic.
The section of Trump trying to make America great again. It's not clear to me. How are you going to make America great again? You're going to have all these people who can't retrain themselves or whatever into this kind of weird new thing that we're going to, that no one knows what we're going into. It's like it's all happening at the wrong time, if you ask me.
It's all coming. Yeah, it's definitely a perfect storm. That was what I was kind of trying to say before. There's a whole lot that's funky happening right now that Trump, again, on the negative side, and then Trump is trying to desperately, with his cuts and his, begging for the low rates, he's trying to offset that negative stuff, because this list is, again, I would argue that it's good for humanity at this point until they become Terminator and start trying to kill us. These are tools. Should we in the long term have only human bodies doing these things? Probably not. Right?
I definitely disagree.
What do you mean?
Historians, come on. We need people.
I said only done by humans. Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I think some of the efficiency. Because where is AI going to pull its historical data from? It's going to pull it from manipulated websites, news agencies. It's not going to necessarily pull it from source data to give people an idea what history is. So I find that really problematic if we actually replace historians with computers with AI generated content. That's insane.
I think if you can't tell by now, I clearly am not on the pro AI thing. So.
No, I like using it as a tool, and there's definitely tools that all of these people with a job title can actually use it for. and some more than others more efficiently, but actually replacing humans in them, I think is a terrible idea. But I'm actually more optimistic than you, Percy, as I actually think it will correct itself. I think people will find out that this is a bad idea and stop using it.
Oh, wait, let me just clarify. I am optimistic in that front. I'm just saying that one of my reasons why I'm not for AI is because I'm very clear-headed about the actors behind the AI people. They have traditionally been, or still are. They come from the globalist tech background world.
No,
What?
this is the list of industries least affected.
Okay, got it.
I changed the page.
Okay, sorry, I missed that.
The people that are
you're like, this is bullshit. See?
No, I read the other page, and then I was like,
this AI thing, so-called productivity, come from that culture, like globalists, like we don't need humans, and they're not necessarily America First people either. So if you look at their politics, like I kind of researched their background. They're not. Their headspace is somewhere else. So I'm not for AI on that.
So you question some of their intentions.
They're exactly, and I'm a tech guy too. I use a lot of technology. I just don't know how this is going to add up, and I'm not. But to Nikki's point, yes, I am confident that people will see that for what it is. I'm not saying we don't need AI. It just needs to be configured differently and integrated into our society, so that Mr. Proofreader, Miss Proofreader still has a job. There's no reason we say, like, we tell them like we don't need human proofreaders anymore, or musicians.
We absolutely need human proofreaders. That's ridiculous.
Because
here's the positive spin. Start. Learn how to program AI.
Of course.
Google has class. It's free.
That's
learn how to program AI, do it yourself, and then we can be the people who write the ship.
That was the argument for robots, like in the factory, like, oh my God, robots are taking over building the cars. And it was like, all right, well, instead of going to trade school to learn how to build a car by hand, go to trade school and learn how to run the robot machines and fix the robots that are building the cars,
or create the robot machine.
Create the robot,
not just run it,
and
create it.
And just to be clear,
design it.
I think that it sounds like we're kind of all in agreement, but the only thing I would add is I think that just in the context, right, of the wonky economy, frankly, our economies, there's some underpinnings that are not healthy, right? There's turmoil. There's certainly some good things about it, but there's some rotten things about it too. And I think what Perseus was saying is true, which is there's a whole lot of shit happening right now that's disruptive. And I don't know if we know for sure that it's going to be ultimately super positive or ultimately super negative. It may be negative at first and then turn positive, or it may, to your point, Nikki, kind of poof and turn into like not as much of a thing as everybody thought it was going to be. But at the very least, there are people that are going to lose their jobs over this. And it may be industries that were sort of sunsetting anyway. Like, again, going back to the proofreaders, I don't know if that was one of the most popular majors in the last, 10 years, right? Like, I think that, that
would be an editor, I would think, or
copy editor or whatever, right? Like,
or you're a writer, you go into writing and then that's part of your
right.
Okay. And all I'm saying, just so I don't want to keep repeating myself, is that if you are on the MAGA brand, you can't be cavalier and say AI is the wave of the future and not come across like you're sympathetic, empathetic of people who are losing their job, because there will be social and political consequences.
Totally. That is very true.
These people that
we all agree on
their job, guess what? They'll be out there picketing.
I exactly.
They're going to be throwing their shoes in the machines. Saboteurs.
Absolutely. And to add to that, Mr. Musk, who runs that site, who wants to start his own political party, thinks that AI could solve all of the ills of the world.
Yeah, that guy.
So come on.
This is
we got to be realistic here.
Musk's a good example, right? Is he really America first, or is he more I know
Is
what is
Elon
he
first?
what is he first about? I still don't know what his
His tweets lately have been mostly about AI taking over the world. So and changing, solving population,
Yeah,
which is
collapse. Yeah,
so weird.
I know. That's a whole other. That's a whole
Like
other.
I don't
episode.
even understand how that concept works.
Well, but just
Here.
real quick on
How are you going
that,
to
like his
increase
argument.
human reproductivity with AI? How are we doing that? You know, unless you're talking about artificial insemination tools and things. But
Well, he's a big proponent of like population replacement, right? His argument is that America's below replacement numbers. Again, it's a larger issue, but I would argue that AI, again, that split that we talked about where productivity is splitting from human bodies, that's actually going to mitigate to some degree this need for bodies, to do things. I mean, that's, kind of, Japan hasn't been,
but you will never have a need for bodies to actually reproduce human beings.
Not saying, yeah, totally. I'm just saying that we're about to embark on sort of a whole new world, and it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. It's going to be very disruptive for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, it's going to be disruptive, but let's hope that it doesn't disrupt the MAGA and America First movement. That's my other concern, because we're barely year one in, and I don't want like other people's priorities screw things up, because we're still trying to turn the boat on the last 4 or 5 years.
Absolutely.
I don't care if you like AI or hate AI, just don't F up the whatever we're trying to do here. And my concern is that it's going to do that, because we don't care. We don't need those jobs. AI could take care of it. Guarantee you those people will be picketing for the other party if they don't have anything to keep them busy.
That's the truth. That is true.
So is that the happy bean?
The happy bean. Go have baby. Go make some babies.
Yeah.
All right. Well, okay. I think we will save the. Well, it is a happy, because we ended on a positive. 8 humans who triumphed over time.
We all ended up sort of agreeing. So.
Okay. All right. Well, have a great weekend. Thank you for showing up. And
there you go.
There you go.
Okay. All right. I'll see you guys next week.
Y'all. Okay. Thanks, guys. Bye.